Welcome to SOGCast number 18. Welcome tonight, and thank you to Jocko Willing Productions. We are able to bring this interview to you live from North Carolina. And we thank tonight we have a special guest, a longtime friend who I served together with at CCN. And tonight we want to welcome Clete Babysan, Sinyard, to the show. Clete, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
I was going to start the show out with, instead of having a really great war story, which you've got many, and your history is so rich, I was going to start out the story with me leaving after my first tour of duty. You and I were both up on Marble Mountain. I was on the one mountain, right. You're on the other one, and you saw me leaving. It was my last day of my first tour of duty. I was leaving, and you came down and gave me a goodbye hug. It's like I took that hug home with me, brother. I got to tell you that. But more importantly, you have a unique history. And when I was at CCN and finally met you in early '69,
right,
you, Dave Maurer, were two men that I held in the highest esteem, because on your right shoulder patch you had the first cav. And over time, because you're both so damn humble, you wouldn't talk about it much. You were both in the first cav. And a little valley called the Drang Valley in 1965 November, and you went in before the historic battles thereafter as a scout?
I was in a Pathfinder detachment.
Pathfinder, that's the word, which is no longer in the
Actually,
Army.
it was the 11th Pathfinder Company, the only company-sized Pathfinder unit ever deployed to combat.
No.
Yes.
So before we get into a couple of your excellent stories from your days as a 1-0 running recon at CCN, I just am obligated, because few Americans know. They've seen the movie. It's a great film about the first major battle between American forces and the North Vietnamese Army. But you were there before the battle, and to this day it just blows my mind that you and a couple of your fellow Pathfinders were out there doing recon prior to the first historic battle of that major of the war itself. So start a little bit. You landed there at outside of the Drang Valley, and you were with that Pathfinder unit. So talk to us a little bit about that before we get into your SOG story, sir, if you don't mind.
We landed by ship at Quang Nhân, South Vietnam. And
you took a ship over it.
Yes.
No ship.
A ship. And it was a 30-day cruise from hell.
And not enough bathrooms, not enough deck space to work on your suntan, no PT, no weapons.
Oh, we did PT.
Is that right?
We ran around the deck, and we did target practice off the fantail of the ship. They put barrels on ropes and drop them off the back of the ship, and we zeroed our new M16s on those barrels.
Now, was that the M16, the early version with the 3 prongs at the end before they refined the flash suppressor on it?
We took them out of the box before we got on the bus at Fort Benning, Georgia, and took them out of the box, left the boxes in a dumpster there, loaded on the bus, and left Charleston on August 14th of 1965.
Wow, no kidding.
USS Darby.
So for 30 days, you float across to Southeast Asia. Welcome. So you landed where? Around the Cam Bay then?
No, we landed, the ship, we landed in Quang Nhân.
Oh, okay.
We went through the canal zone to Long Beach, where they restocked the ship, refueled for a day or so. And
no shore leave or anything, huh?
No shore leave. But, and then next stop was Quang Nhân.
No kidding. Welcome to Vietnam.
Yeah, and we were transported by Chinook helicopters to An Khê, which is probably 200 miles inland from Quang Nhân, to set up our base camp. We had an advance party at An Khê that had already cleared the helicopter pad, and there was a fixed wing airstrip there, but they had already gone in and set that up for the aircraft. And we slept in pup tents. We had 2-man pup tents, and we slept in pup tents till the GP mediums were shipped in from Queen Anne off the ship.
And a GP medium can hold how many men?
Well, we
I'm sorry.
We had a team. Each Pathfinder team had a GP medium, and there was 15 of us on each
Oh,
team.
it's one of those big tents.
Yes.
And it's canvas, and it's hotter than hell in the
Yeah.
summertime.
Oh yes.
Oh.
Oh yes.
And you're down 2 core? That was 2 core or 3?
That was 2 core.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so you're there. At some point, you're getting used to it. Now, the other interesting aspect of this story with you in Vietnam was the fact that at some point, just for the hell of it, you were kind of bored. You rode as the first door gunner in the first cav with your M16 before they had M60s or miniguns or rocket pods or anything. Is that before or after the Battle of Drang Valley?
This is all before the first cav went operational. Somehow, in the great scheme of things, they hadn't thought about having anyone in the helicopter to shoot back. So, Bruce Crandall, Major Crandall, he was.
And just for the record, Bruce, I got my Medal of Honor later than anybody else, but I got it. Crandall,
Right.
from the first cav. And if you've seen the movie We Were Soldiers Once, you'll see his portrayal, which was, I forget the actor's name, but he did a hell of a job.
But I was his first door gunner.
His first door gunner with the M16.
With an M16. And what he was doing, he was the 101st Airborne was pulling security for the 1st Cavalry Division on their perimeter until
No.
we could get a division base camp set up.
Okay.
And for the first time he moved the 101st from one patrol spot, they moved them every day
Right.
to keep confusion for any attacks that might
Indeed.
occur.
So this is the 101st Airborne Division did base security for the 1st Cav. I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
That's correct.
Okay, moving right along with the story, sir.
But Colonel Crandall got shot at the first day that he was moving the security around.
Yeah.
And he came back to the aviation commander, Colonel Burdett, and told him that he needed someone sitting in that aircraft shooting back when he was receiving fire. And they came to the Pathfinder Company and asked for volunteers to fly door gunner. And we were digging stumps and clearing perimeter and
Of
putting out
course.
concertina wire and all this stuff. And the privates were very employed with that. But the volunteer thing seemed like a good idea. So several of us volunteered.
That's one of the only times you ever, other than SOG, it's one of the few times you failed to follow the first rule of the Army: never volunteer for anything.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But we, fortunately, I got Major Crandall. I was selected for his door gunner, and my buddy, I can't.
It'll come to you. We'll get back to him.
But anyway, my buddy flew for Ed Freeman.
Really?
He was called too tall to fly because he was he's around 6'8",
Right.
and he was disqualified by medical standards because of his height to fly. But somehow it worked out that he was the wingman.
And again, just for the record, we have to point out that Mr. Freeman received his Medal of Honor in a timely fashion.
That's true.
My God.
Very true.
What history.
But we flew. All of us had our air medal before the first cav ever
And the
went
air medal with
operational.
a V device probably, because you guys were.
No, it was just air medals and air medal. There's no,
Sure.
I don't think there's a V on it, but
Okay.
But you have to have at least 16. At that time, you had to have 16 assaults into an LC before you could receive.
Right. 'Cause I remember with us, we had to keep a log
Right,
before you could even be put in for the medal.
right.
Oh,
But,
my God.
But
Yeah.
before we ever went operational,
Yeah.
all of us had received.
You were
our-
there already.
Right. But
Uh,
it was trying times, but we found out the first flight that the M16s were not going to work because,
you had to change magazines.
yeah, and we taped the magazines together where we'd have 3 and we'd rotate them.
3?
That didn't work long. I
Wait,
mean,
wait. How did you do 3?
Well,
I'm used to
that's-
2. Flip one and the other,
flip
but
one,
3?
flip one in the middle, and the other
Okay.
2.
No kidding.
But
Okay.
that's 60 rounds of ammo. So 60 rounds, if you're
Or
receiving,
54, because you're only doing 2, keeping 2 out
right,
in the mag,
right.
so the springs don't break on you.
Yeah, yeah, but technically yes.
Indeed.
But we discussed what we were going to do, and we suggested to Major Crandall that we attach the G-13 parachute cord to the roof of the aircraft with a clip hanging down. The handle, carrying handle on an M60 machine gun, fit right into the snap link of the parachute cord.
Oh,
And,
perfect. Yeah.
That's what we used
From thereafter.
from thereafter. We had a 50 caliber ammo box that we linked up 7.62 ammo for the machine gun.
Right.
We could have 3,000 to 5,000 rounds of ammo
Wow.
that linked up, ready for flight. So that's what we used.
So even in the early part of war, I assume there's times you went through quite a few rounds.
Oh yes, several boxes
Yeah, this is all before the infamous battle of
Yes.
the Drang Valley.
before the first cav went operational.
So while you're earning your air medal, flying with him, at some point, the CO or whoever your commanding officer, NCOIC was, says, hey, we Pathfinders, we got a mission in this valley. What was that like, getting that marching orders and then actually going out? What was your, I think I know what it would be, but it's better hearing it from the man who was on the ground.
Really, it was just a part of the job. We're going back from door gunner
You're too modest,
to
Babysan.
what we were trained to do.
Yeah, well, you're doing your door gunner. You're like a volunteer to get out of sandbag duty, but you're still out there, which is during our time, between us ground pounders, they said that door gunners by 67 and 68, their life expectancy was 5 to 10 minutes
True,
in a combat zone.
true.
So here you are, just in your spare time, fighting those kind of odds. And some time they said, here, run this mission, which at the time, did you have any intel reports at all about the NVA division or battalion or whatever the hell it was that was there already?
No, that was way north of where we were.
Really?
That was, up at Pleiku
Okay.
in that area. And we had no idea. We were just protecting the division area and making milk runs for the 101st and carrying food out to the troops. And
so then it comes around, it's time for the Pathfinders to hit the ground prior to the Drang Valley, the insertion of the troops there.
by that time, they had trained door gunners. They had door mounts in the helicopters ready for the door gunners that were trained. And they come in and took the mission, and we went back to doing our Pathfinder duties, which was to set up landing zones and direct the aircraft when they were coming into the landing zones.
Right. So you were on the ground for how many days before the actual assault occurs? Because you're down there, just you with a two-man team. I'm not familiar how the Pathfinders worked.
It was usually you could be in 30 minutes before the aircraft. They drop you off 30 minutes before, or you could be overnight.
Right.
Uh,
So in this case, you're in there, you clear the LZs, you bring the helicopters in, the shit hits the fan. Are you still there? What capacity? How's your role changed at that point?
We still control that LZ until the infantry moves out doing their mission, patrolling.
Sure.
And looking for the enemy. And at that point, you either move with the infantry company or battalion or whatever size the unit is. You move with them, or you're pulled back and set up another LZ somewhere else. Where they're going to need to move troops to.
So you were busy there for a while, because then they had the second battle and the third battle, which was just horrific in nature.
Well, really, the combat portion of it started at the Play Me Special Forces camp.
That's where it all began.
That's where it all began, because they were trying to overrun Play Me Special Forces camp. And the first cav was, I think that was second of the 5th and the first of the 12th Cavalry that went into Play Me. LZ is outside of Play Me. And we were setting up LZs for those units, those 2 battalions to come in. So a lot of Pathfinders were busy. We hopscotched with those infantry troops down the valley. I can't remember how many LZs, but I was only on 1 or 2 LZs because we alternated Pathfinders. And I went back to the rear area to Camp Holloway at Pleiku. That's where we were staged. And I was redirected to me and 2 other Pathfinders were directed to the turkey farm. That's what it was called. Turkey Farm Control was our call sign. But it was a tea plantation owned by a French farmer.
Of course.
And
who paid bribes to the VCs so they wouldn't mess with his tea.
It protected him. He was willing, because we were protecting him from the NVA, because they're in that valley. And we were like 30 miles from the mountain where the LZ X-ray was finally set up.
Right.
But we hopscotched from Play Me Special Forces camp down to before the mountain. Before we got anywhere near LZ X-ray, we broke contact and pulled us other 2 battalions out. And it was a week or so later when the 7th Cav went into LZ X-ray.
Wow.
And I wasn't a part of that. I was running the resupply point, which was that airfield at the tea plantation.
And that was no cakewalk, because when you were coming in and out, you guys were getting hammered.
Well, one night we watched the VC come down the side of the airfield. We didn't go inside the perimeter where the 1st of the 5th and the 2nd of the 12th were brought back to before, after they finished their battle. They recovered there, and we were sitting there one night. We stayed out on the airfield instead of going back to where there's secure area. We'd stay there at night and
being a Pathfinder and all, just keeping an eye out on things.
Somebody stayed awake all night, but there's aircraft would come in at night too. But,
sure.
We one night we watched the VC come down the far side of the airfield and attack the supply depot at the tea plantation.
No.
And we just stayed low and let what happened happen. But
so at some point that all wrapped up, you come back to the States. Is there anything else exciting during that first tour of duty? Because that's just an incredible experience in the early part of the war to be there at that phase for that battle. And then you had your tour of duty with the first Cav. That at some point you hear about, learn about, smell about Special Forces, and you say, someday I want to be a Green Beret.
Really, in jump school. Really,
in jump school?
Really
Okay.
in jump school, the idea formulated because Charlie Gray,
Charlie
Gray, who was a future SOG guy,
Indeed.
was in jump school in our class, and Charlie had come out of Korea to go to Special Forces training, and he had to go to jump school. But he was a senior guy in our barracks.
And nobody messed with Charlie.
Nobody messed with Charlie.
Oh.
But he was he really helped us out a lot. He taught us a lot. He wasn't overbearing with his leadership, but he was big enough to influence and back it up.
Indeed. Or just kick your ass if you got out of line.
But when we graduated from jump school, he last time I saw him in jump school, he was leaving with two guys with a Green Beret on, and it kind of formed up in the back of my mind.
Sure.
And
you do your tour of duty, you come back, and meanwhile you're thinking in the back of your mind, you being the big thinker that you were at that time.
When I came back from Vietnam in late June, July of '66, I was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division.
Just down the street from Green Berets training.
Right.
Yes.
And I served as a squad leader in the 82nd for 2 years.
Really?
Re-enlisted for Special Forces.
Wow.
So the January 2nd of January, we started our class. And most of us were combat veterans that were in that class. Larry Treble was one in the class. No. There were several that went to SOG that were in that class of Special Forces. We were all weapons class, but
the boy toy class.
They brought in some privates, like John Plaster was one.
The Baby SF program was kicking in.
Gilmer. There was just a number of them that were in our MOI class.
Sure, and John L. Plaster just happens to be SOGcast number 10 for those in the audience who might be interested someday to dial in. But, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
But we started MOI, and our instructor was
Mo
Worley.
In your MOS class, and how did he teach his class? Because
I'll
never forget that story.
He was method of instruction, and he was one of the best instructors I think that I've ever known.
Sure.
But he was in a body cast from his waist up. His arm had a rod running from his arm to his shoulder, and it was cast solid. His left arm was free, but
so he could pick his nose and wipe himself.
That's about it. But he was so impressed. I was so impressed because this guy, injured that way, already back working, giving methods of instruction to a bunch of new SF guys.
Oh my God! Talk about living legends. And again, the injuries he acquired was on a SOG recon mission.
I had no idea until later.
Many years later, because he's so humble, he never talked about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I had no idea until later.
Oh my God. Yeah. So Mo Worley, the first, the one, and the only.
We finished the method of instructions, and then we went to the field exercise. After the field exercise, we went into the weapons class. Well, Mo Worley showed up as an instructor in the weapons class, and he had his cast off, and he was somewhat back to normal, and he was even better instructor because he's recovering from his injuries. But he really made a lasting impression on me, and I didn't find out till after I went to SOG that he had actually gotten injured out of
Pontoon at FOB too.
Running recon.
Wow.
And
so you finally get through it all. You graduate, do the FTX, your final FTX, phase 2. At some point, which would be what time? Did you get the leave prior to going to Vietnam?
yes, I took a 30-day leave home, and I took my family back to Alabama and set them up, got the children in school,
Indeed.
and left for Vietnam.
And when was this?
This was August of '66.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. So you returned to Vietnam, and where's your first assignment then?
We had out of a training group, we had direct orders. There was 12 of us that had orders directly to SOG.
Really?
Yes. Department of the Army, they were diverting NCOs at Cameron Bay to the infantry outfit, whether
Right.
you had a beret or not at that time. But they couldn't do it because we was under the Department of Army orders to be directly to SOG.
Yeah, because by 60, this is 67, you said? 66.
66.
Yeah, so they're looking, by that time, anybody with combat experience, it would be 67.
Wait a minute. No.
Yeah,
no.
because you landed
Wait a
there,
minute.
came home in 66, did your training, so it would be 67.
It'd be.
Or 68?
We finished in January we started weapons training January of '68.
There we go.
Now we're back on track.
Sure.
'68, we graduated in late July of '68, and our orders was to be in
Cameron Bay? They report to the Drang.
in Fort Lewis by
Oh, that's right.
August.
Whatever, but you're there. Then from there, you go
Yeah.
to the Drang, little in-country training. You get your in-country training for 3 weeks.
We had no in-country training.
No, because you had your direct orders.
Well, they held us up. They said they were processing us. I don't know why they held us up, but on August 24th, the morning of August 24th, somebody come running over to the tent.
So
where
right
we
now
were.
you're in the Drang. You've arrived from the States. You're in the Drang at the base camp for all SF
Fifth group,
operations, 5th Group headquarters. So it's August 24th, 1968.
Right.
Or it may have been the 23rd, because the attack was in the morning, and they came in for. But take it from there, because this is the historic battle at Da Nang.
Okay, 23rd. The attack was the night of the 23rd, right?
It was the morning, like midnight goes past, so they hit around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning,
Okay.
and then they needed
All
reaction
right, so
forces.
it's the morning of the 24th that the attack actually occurred.
No, 23rd. It was the morning of the 23rd it attacked. And then you went up that's when you got the word about the attack, and you
Okay,
shipped
so
your troops
it
north.
was the 23rd that we got
Yes,
there
sir.
then.
Yeah, because you react as like a
Right,
reaction force
right.
from the Drang.
Right.
So,
And-
but again, this is what's unique about your story. You landed at Drang, which is the base. You're going to get some in-country training. Instead, it's August 23rd, where there was an NVA sapper attack at FOB-4 in Da Nang, where they killed 16 Green Berets. To this day, the most historic, tragic loss of Green Berets in one day.
Right.
And they needed a reaction force with clout. They turn to you guys and go to the Da Nang FOB-4. You report in there. Instead of getting any in-country training, of course, you're a combat vet, so you be cool, not to worry. But welcome to the Secret War. You report to FOB-4, and coming down Highway 1, What was that like walking into that base after that tremendous, unbelievable battle?
If you remember the old bus, we had the old school bus
Indeed,
type bus
yes.
that picked us up at the airport. We got on the Blackbird and we couldn't understand the camouflage green and black
Yeah, so you're in the train.
aircraft.
Yeah,
Well,
there you
what the
go.
heck is this? It really hadn't dawned on us really what we were getting into. And we were on the bus and we're going through the front gate of FOB4, and I'm thinking one strand of concertina wire around the front of that compound all the way to the back to the beach was all that was between the NVA.
POW camp.
And, well, the POW camp was completely secure because they had strands and strands
Yeah,
of concertina.
but at our base, at FOB4 at the time, you were underwhelmed with the security you saw.
Absolutely. I mean, just on the bus.
Yeah.
Before I even got off and saw,
So at this point, were you an E4, E5?
I was an E5.
Oh, you had all that rank. I forgot what a powerful dude you were.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So Sergeant Sinyard arrives, you come on base, and welcome to the secret war.
Well, we didn't know it was a secret war yet. Because,
You didn't get your briefing
they
or
were too
anything.
busy
You're too busy reacting.
recovering.
Picking up dead
and we
bodies.
we helped in recovering the camp. They set up security finally, I guess, because Recon Company had the security posted along the beach
Right.
area. And
They
the
got a little
hatchet-
bit more serious about it then.
Yes, we were actually. They had posts along that, and we started digging trenches.
So just for our listeners who might be coming into episode 17 here for the first time, FOB4 was on the beach in China Beach in Da Nang. It was in the south part of Da Nang, and it was a top secret base that had been hit by a sapper attack. And the security at the beach had been lacking, but the attack took over a year for them to plan. They hit at night. They had sappers that came in wearing headbands that said, "We came here to die." They did, plenty of them. And for several hours, there was like sheer hell during that night. We've interviewed Larry Trimble in an earlier SOGcast, who was on the mountain, who took out the mortar units. Had they not, there would have been far more casualties. And so you come in, and there's still the base is on fire, different places, buildings are smoking. They're picking up our wounded,
Blood
picking up
everywhere.
the dead.
Blood
And
everywhere.
back to you, sir, because you're the man walking into this picture.
Well, it was shocking, but believable because of lack of security. And I was concerned. It didn't bother me too much to be out there setting up new security. The guy that came in with us was Staff Sergeant Morgan. He was an engineer, and he was given the responsibility. He didn't come out of training group. He was just part of a group that was of our group that was on orders to come to SOG.
Right.
But he was given the responsibility for setting up the minefield, the barbed wire, all the obstacles of the new defense perimeter. And that was his sole responsibility. And they gave him details of Indians or whatever, Americans, whoever could get, or they could get to help him.
Right.
And they built another tower. The Seabees come in and built another guard tower down on the beach side of the perimeter.
And then they repaired the damage to the comm center.
Right.
And the new TOC was damaged, but it withstood the attack.
Right. But they built they actually reinforced all of it except the S1 building, the camp headquarters. But Larry Trimble, by the way, was in my weapons class.
No.
He graduated from Special Forces training in the same
Little
class.
did you know Larry was up on the mountain with
No, I
his
didn't
own
know
issues.
it till he came down. Till he came down. He came down, and I think they replaced him with another team.
Well, a few days later, but
Yeah.
he had that little issue of his ditch leaving him.
Right.
He was the Lone Ranger for a while up there.
Yeah. But
oh my God.
But that was it was a couple of days before Colonel Warren called the new replacements into his office, and we were sitting there waiting for him, and he walked into the office and introduced himself and
You're up at the headquarters?
up to headquarters and in the commander's office, and
Oh, really?
yes, and
Oh, you got the big briefing.
oh yeah. But he welcomed us to CNC, and he said, I've got to show you this map, and he opened the map. It was a plywood cover for the map, and he opened the doors to the map, and he had the map of Vietnam. There was a red line down through the Vietnam border, and he said, "You're living here at Da Nang," and he pointed to the map to Da Nang. "You're living here. This is your home. Your job, if you stay here, will be over here, over
Across
the
the
red
fence.
over the red line."
Yeah.
And he said,
Indian territory.
he closed the map and said, "Those of you who don't want to be a part of that operation need to leave now."
Wow.
And nobody got up. Then they brought out the
NDAs?
non-disclosure
Agreements, yes, indeed.
agreement, and
You can't talk to anybody for 20 years. If you do,
Yeah,
we will
right.
prosecute you federally.
right. And
Indeed.
then he broke us down. Most of us went to recon company, and a few hatchet force, but most of us, and welcome to recon world. I was sent to RT Moccasin. At that time, it was ST.
Right, because there were STs until January
Right.
1st, and they changed everything to
Right.
RTs because
Right.
they figured the bad guys knew what the STs were, RTs.
But I was on ST Moccasin with who was Lonnie Stone. Lonnie Stone was a sergeant first class. He had no combat experience, but he was the team leader of
Yeah,
ST Moccasin.
and this is after the attack. They lost a lot of people. I don't know how many people they lost for the recon company. I know they lost a few.
I'm not sure how many,
Yeah.
but there was a good number.
Oh, yeah.
But we started training, and I started learning the ropes, all the movements, and breaking contact. And
So was Moccasin a Montagnard team or Vietnamese?
no, it was Vietnamese.
Okay, how was your when you got introduced to them? They must have been happy because you're like the same height as they were.
Well, it was fine. I mean,
It wasn't like my meeting with my 01. He looked at me and goes, your feet are too big, you're too tall, and you look stupid.
I would say I fit in better.
Yeah, much better. And plus, you were a combat vet.
Yes.
They knew what a combat patch was, and by that
Yes.
time,
Yes.
everybody knew what the first Cav had been through in that valley of hell.
But we went through a training cycle, and they sent us on our first mission was to Bamituit to CCS.
Really?
And our mission
At that time, it's FOB 5.
right,
Yeah.
and we were given a mission of a POW snatch, and briefed and debriefed, and our mission was planned to go in the next day at 5 o'clock. We would fly.
And you were flying to Cambodia.
We were flying north to the Fish Hook,
Oh, the Fishhook area, okay.
and
And for our listeners, the
And-
Fishhook area was Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam.
right,
And there was several infiltration routes into South Vietnam from there, which was a
Right.
major area of contention for FOB 2 and 5. which later became CCS.
Right.
And we lost some major teams in there.
Right. And we the night before we was to insert, a guy kept riding a motorcycle up down the hallway of the barracks we were staying in. And I kept telling Lonnie Stone, I said, Sarge, you're the team leader. You need to go out there and stop that guy so we can get some rest. And he wouldn't do it. And finally I got up. I walked out in the hallway. And the guy come down the hallway and he stopped the motorcycle right there at my legs. And he said, can I help you? And I said, you sure could. If you please turn that motorcycle off and stop running up down this hall so we can get some rest. We're launching at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd sure appreciate it. He said, you got it. And he turned the motorcycle off and pushed it out. Little did I know until later it was Mad Dog Shriver.
No.
The legend of CCS, probably of SOG.
Indeed, and we have a book coming out soon that we'll talk about in a few future episodes here. But yes, Mad Dog, Jerry, a.k.a. Mad Dog Shriver, appropriately named.
Appropriate name.
A great moniker for that individual.
The Mad Dog was riding the motorcycle.
Oh, my God. What a small world.
Yeah.
So you finally launched, and how the launch? You said you're going to launch late in the day for a reason.
No, early.
Okay.
Early. And
thank you for the
at
accuracy.
At daylight we flew. We got inserted early in the morning. It was probably 7 or 8 o'clock before we actually hit the landing zone insert. And we moved for a couple of days, and we came up on a trail.
So let me just hold you up for a second. That area of operations, what was the canopy like? Were you in double, triple canopy, or was it like, because by that time there'd been some significant bombing and napalm runs?
We didn't see any. It was just jungle.
Triple canopy?
Not really. Not
Okay.
like in Laos.
Right.
It was just jungle. It wasn't double canopy.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
And moving was okay. You know, you get a wait a minute vine here and there, but not thick, like I
Laos.
found later.
Yeah.
But we moved for a couple of days, and we was moving slow and easy, and we came up on a trail, and we found a bamboo frame for maybe a battalion-size force along the trail, and Lonnie Stone left me and the indige there along the trail, and we were looking for a prisoner. We were supposed to make a prisoner snatch.
Sure.
And he said, I'm going to go up here and photograph this bivouac area, and he did. And while he was gone, up the trail comes a man in uniform with an AK, folding stock AK over his shoulder, whistling.
Whistling. Was he whistling Dixie?
I don't think it was Dixie,
No.
but
Singing the Ho Chi Minh hymn.
but he was far enough down the trail till I had time to set the team up. Who was going to grab the legs, who was going to grab the arms, and I had the silenced pistol. I was going to shoot him.
The 22 standard.
I was going to
high
shoot
power,
him.
yeah.
I was going to shoot him before he.
Yes.
Before
And where were you going to shoot him? Just so our audience doesn't know.
and a
you're
leg,
going to be so,
and a leg or
to
an
disable
arm.
him, slow him down.
I was
a
just
little.
going to cripple him.
Yeah.
But so maybe he wouldn't put up too much fight. And, Stone came back to the group.
Right in the
and
middle of you're looking at your potential POW?
We're watching them. The Indians are watching, and I'm conversing with Stone, telling him what's going on. And I said, we've got a guy coming up the trail. We're prepared to take him. And he said, we don't have time. I've got helicopters on short final. And I said, Lonnie, that's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. I said, where's the LZ? He said, just down the hill over the trail. I said, we need to snatch this guy. We can have him down on that LZ.
Shoot him, pack him up, and take him home.
And he said no. And he was at 1-0.
Oh, yeah.
And excellent opportunity. And I could just see that trip home after being there.
Because you're already thinking about your bonus and your R&R. So what'd you think about, where's your R&R going to be if you get this POW, get it back there alive?
But that all went out of the window. We had to get down because the guy's getting close enough now. So he whistled on up the trail. And as soon as he got out of sight, we booked for the LZ, and we were there waiting on the helicopters when they set down.
Oh, my God.
But it was
so
perfect.
close, but yet so far away.
The Indians were more
Pissed.
upset than I was. They were upset because they knew what the deal was. They knew there was going to be a reward if we did.
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
They were very upset. We flew back. They dropped us on top of, I guess that's Korok Mountain. That's at the Fish Hook. I can't remember the name.
Korok's way north by Queso.
Okay, it's not Korok, but there's another large mountain.
They took
by
you to
the
a large
Fish Hook.
mountain. The thing is, this is your mission. They take you to the top of this mountain and then
After
go
they
back.
debrief us,
Right. Oh.
back in Bamatuit.
Really?
They debrief us, and they send us north back to that mountain. And we played radio relay for other teams for a couple of weeks
Oh,
before
wow.
we came back to Bamatuit. And we came back after the radio relay, we came back to Bamatuit and caught a 123 back to Da Nang.
Right.
But,
So is that on that radio relay site, was that where the Kings would take you in? Set the one wheel down, you jump out the door?
we yeah, that on the you're talking about on the mountain.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they
For your
dropped us
radio
off.
relay
Yeah,
site.
they dropped us off by helicopter, and then they picked us up by helicopter, kind of like Marble Mountain.
Yeah, sure.
Only it's just a single peak, but we did. It was cool. There's nothing, no action, no
Wow. So you go back and
we go back to Bamatuit and back to Da Nang, and they take Lonnie off the 1-0 spot, and I guess I've become the 1-0 of RT Moccasin or ST Moccasin.
yeah, because you had combat experience.
Yeah,
You've been
and-
across the fence,
and
and you would have had a POW.
would have had a POW. First mission.
Indeed.
It would
yeah.
have been icing on the cake.
Your cherry missing on top of that.
Right.
My God.
But they put Lonnie flying covey. I still don't understand that move either, but
Well, rank has its privileges sometimes, which is
I
not.
guess.
The rule is supposed to be experience first, but sometimes because of rank, and we've seen other examples of where that led us astray.
That's
But in your case, you become the 1-0. So at that point, welcome to 1-0 status.
We had a guy, Skiba, that came in, and Skiba become the 1-1. And he had no combat experience either. And before we ran another mission, Galbert was on Larry Tremble's team. Galbert had gone through Special Forces training with me too. And he had come over on the plane with me to
As part of your group?
Drang, yeah, as part of the group. But he was on Tremble's team, and Tremble transferred to ASP, I think. And when he transferred to ASP, that left the 1-0 spot open. And Galbert told me, he said, I don't want to be a 1-0. I want you to come over and do the 1-0. And I thought about it for a day or two, and Galbert and I talked some more, and I decided to move over to Rattler.
No kidding.
And I moved.
Because that was a pretty good team.
Yes, it was.
After Larry trained them up a little further, you
Well,
picked up a team that had experience.
We had Vietnamese team,
Right.
And the Vietnamese interpreter could speak better English than I could.
No southern accent, right?
No, well, he had a French accent, but he I didn't trust him.
Really?
From the beginning, because we conversed, and he told me. I asked him. I said, "Where did you get all your education that you can speak such fluent English?" And he said, "I went to college in France." And that made me a little nervous, because I'm thinking that
we knew other Vietnamese like Ho Chi Minh who had gone to France for education.
Right.
Yeah.
And it didn't add up.
And
So.
they had a very, very strong communist power base there.
But I wrestled with that for several days, and we did our training and PT and rifle fire and all that.
So what did it feel like to be the 1-0 at that point? I mean, after what you'd been through already, you had one mission successful. Well, you got the film back. He was happy about that. It could have been better, but welcome to the 1-0. I mean, walking into that and then go to a new team.
To me, it was no different than being a squad leader in the 82nd Airborne Division, except you're doing it within the indigenous. And
only difference, you got an interpreter who may be hinky or maybe not.
Exactly. That was my biggest concern.
Sure.
And one day there come a knock at the door of the hooch, and I walk out, and there's a mountain guard standing there with 11 compadres saying, "We want you to recon team." And I sat down on the step and tried to understand what he was trying to tell me. And he said, "We want to be a recon team. We want you to be our leader." And I called Galbert out of the hooch, and he sat down and we talked with him. And I told the leader, he had introduced himself. His name was Two, Thieu. Two. I told him, I said, "If you'll come back tomorrow afternoon, this same time, we'll tell you what we're going to do."
Really?
And he said, "Okay." And the mountain guards moved back to the Hatchet Force area. And Galbert and I talked it over, for 24 hours, and we decided that would be a excellent move. They picked us.
No kidding.
They picked us. We didn't pick them. And with all the other stuff that went on with the Vietnamese deal,
I'm feeling hinky about your interpreter. I mean, after the 0-1, in some ways the interpreter is more important, because that's every connection, any kind of communication at all with your little people, it's critical.
Right.
And he could just say one or two words wrong, and you're screwed.
Right. And,
wow.
But
so what became your new team? What was the name of that team that you formed up there with your yards who came to you?
It was RT Rattler. We replaced the Vietnamese.
No kidding.
With the mountain guards. I took them to S1. They transferred the mountain guards to the recon company, and they I don't know. I don't know what they did with the Vietnamese.
And you don't care. They were gone out of your
They
hair.
were gone. They were gone. But, and really, in retrospect, that's the best thing that I could have ever done, or Galbert and I could have ever done. We did it as
Sure.
It wasn't my decision, it was our decision.
But you two had your report, it goes back, so you knew each other really well. There's no issue of trust there, and he had already proven himself. Right. So you knew you had a good man when you're on the ground. You're not worried about your back with him.
He was on my team at McCall.
Which is Camp McCall for your FTX training, which is the final phase of training in Special Forces.
But we had gone through all that. He had gone through weapons training
Yeah.
with me. So I knew him. And we had talked a lot during training.
Sure.
And it just gelled. And it really, it's the best thing that could have happened to either one of us.
That was a good team.
It
You guys
was,
ran some
it
good
was.
missions out of there.
We did. We had some good missions. We ran six missions. We only had one injury. Kia got shot through the hand. We got in an ambush. We went on a mission, and you're not going to believe this. Big Sid, the S1.
Right.
I don't know where you ever knew him.
No, I don't remember the name. I'm sorry.
Him,
That's before my coming down to Drang.
Captain Nicholson, who was
Right.
the
He was the
S1 officer.
Yeah, he's the S1 who never went to the field, who wrote a book saying, "Look at me."
And a Master Sergeant Webb.
Oh, I don't remember him.
And
Okay.
I don't know where he came from, and I don't know where he went.
You're just glad when he was gone.
But well, we went in on the mission, and when we hit the LZ, my recon team was the only recon team on that hatchet force, and that's unusual.
So you're attached to a hatchet force. You're the first guys on the ground before they come in,
right.
and then you're like a quick reaction force if they run into any trouble, or
Right.
if there's,
And
which is
We're
not
no-
an easy assignment. That is
No.
tough.
no, and I hadn't expected anything like that because I thought we were going to just
Do
run-
recon.
do recon,
Do your job.
right.
Not
And,
babysit a hatchet force. Well, not babysit. I'm being cruel here, but be attached to a hatchet force in the hostile territory, and if they get into the shit, who's going to respond first? Your team.
But we hit the ground, and it got formed up, and we start movement. And just as we start movement, guy in black pajamas ran off the LZ,
Off the LZ.
and two raised his rifle to shoot him, and I pushed the barrel down. I told him let him go, and we started moving, and I got Galbert to take half the team to the rear of the hatchet force company, and I took the point.
Then you guys would be talking back and forth in ERC 10s.
I told Galbert, I said, when we'd moved maybe a click, a kilometer away from the LZ, I told him to start putting out toe poppers.
The little M14s that could blow off your toes when you
M14
step on them.
But and we moved on, and he was doing it, and everybody had cleared into an opening like bombed out area. It wasn't B-52s, but it was cleaned out by bombs. There was no brush, just a little light brush, but it was all open. But just as we hit the tree line on the other side of the bomb area, the toe poppers started going off. There's one went off, and then a few minutes another one went off. And
Thank you, Mr. Gabbard.
yes,
Indeed.
he was doing his job. And I think too, remembered at the time that I pushed that barrel down, that what I had in mind to do, but and it worked. I knew at that point that there would be nobody behind us, and for a while.
Yeah, at least give you a while to get used to your A.
I
over
could
your
concentrate on the front and the
Indeed.
sides.
M. And with Gabbard in the back, you didn't have to worry about your rear.
Right.
Wow.
But we moved through the clearing. There's no leadership for the hatchet force.
None easily recognizable by the recon team.
No.
No kidding.
And we come off the mountain down into a creek bed. Our mission was to find an oil line. They were trying to figure
That
out
first
how
pipeline that we heard about, and this is at the end of 68 or early 69 now?
This is early.
Early 69.
wait a minute, 68.
We had the camp
We
attack.
shut down.
and
We
you
shut
changed your
down
team.
from October to January of 68.
Right.
No recon missions were run during that time. I'm sure you were that same thing because.
No, we ran our ass off.
Okay, well, we were
Up
shut.
north,
I don't know
yeah.
why they shut us down from running any recon missions. So it was early '69 when.
In '69, we were running. That's when we came down to CCN, like in
Okay.
the middle of January '69.
All right.
That's where we met for the first time.
Right.
Maybe in the clubhouse.
January 1st, we had a recon team inserted, and we inserted with that hatchet force. We inserted after the Hall, Hawes, and McGibbon.
Which was another team that inserted up north out of FOB 1 at the time.
Right.
Inserted in, got hit at first light on New Year's Day, January 1st.
Right.
3 Americans of KIA, the Indige escape, and the whole psychological impact
Right.
of that sapper attack on that team.
But that put a shock throughout
FOB 1 too,
4.
sure.
Yeah.
Because Spider Parks had flown out. He was flying
Right.
Covey at the time. Went
Right.
out, get a commo check at midnight, and then
Yeah.
he came back in the morning, no commo.
But got back to it was after that
Right.
that we took the hatchet force in with our first mission with the Montagnards. And but we were moving off, and we hit that creek bed, and an ambush opened up. And Kia was my point man, and he opened fire, and I opened fire, and the 2 Indige behind us opened up fire. Well, I'm expecting the hatchet force to deploy into the ambush. It didn't happen. But so
So did they do the DD Mal,
I
which is to
reckon-
get up and go the other way?
they just stayed in place. They didn't move. I told, I radioed Galbert. I told him, pick up the toe poppers and move back up the mountain and take the hatchet force in the rear with you. And he did that, and we started moving. We backed out of the ambush, which is totally
Without
against
any
it.
casualties
Kia got hit
in the hand.
in the hand.
So
That's the only-
you patched him up.
Put a green bandage around his hand and drove
Continue
on.
to march. Okay.
But we withdrew. No further contact. We got back on when I cleared the trees and into the clearing. Houston, Captain Nicholson, and Master Sergeant Webb were sitting huddled together in the center of that opening,
No.
and the Indians were everywhere. So I told Galbert, I said, you start on one side, put these Indians in a defensive perimeter.
Position, sure, yeah.
Perimeter. And he did, and Lonnie Stone come up on the radio after we made contact. After I come out, I made contact with the Covey
Yeah.
and told him what was going on. And I told him we're low of ammo. We need resupply of ammo.
So you had steps of contact. You're being your humble self here again. I mean, to get low on ammo, because you carried a significant ammo load.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But,
So there was a lot more contact here. You were using some ammo
yes.
You weren't just shooting at birds.
No, I called an airstrike in though.
Okay.
When we moved back into the perimeter, I
Yeah.
called airstrike in, and we had L4s just eat that bottom up, all that whole valley where that creek was.
Right.
And there was so much confusion till I radioed Stone, and I told him we're low of ammo. I said, I want helicopters in here. We need to get out of here. I said, there's no control of the hatchet force. We're in a mess. We can't stay here. You've got to
Right.
get us extracted. And he said, I'll see what I can do. And I let it go for a while, and then he came back up and he said, "We can't get aircraft into you today." I told him, "You've got the daylight in the morning to get aircraft in here. If I don't hear helicopter blades chopping in the air at daylight, I'm going to take all the Americans and the recon team, and I'm leaving the Indige here.
The Hatchet Force.
I'm gonna E&E with the recon team and the Americans."
The men you knew you trusted, who would actually fight when they see an enemy.
And Charlie Gray was on relay at Leghorn, and he.
Well, up there may have been Hickory, if you're coming out of
it was Hickory. It was
yeah.
Hickory. Yeah, Hickory.
And Charlie Gray, knowing him, he's recovering from injuries. That's why they had him at the radio relay site, because he got wounded in an accident somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
In the mountain. He was on the operation going back in. Yeah, they went back into the
Marble Mountain.
Marble Mountain after the attack.
Sure. Charlie got wounded there.
Yeah.
His first of many.
But but anyway, I didn't sleep at all that night. I mean, I was awake checking the perimeter. We had the Indige. They had no idea what was going on, and
they were that poorly trained. Wow.
There was no American supervision, none.
And no combo with you, the recon team there to help out, keep an eye out for things? That's just, well, okay. Moving on with that unbelievable story, sir.
Well, the next morning the helicopters came in, and at daylight, and they lifted the entire force out.
Really?
And
some of your beloved King Bees come in for that one or not? Just regular conventional 101st?
It was
probably the 101st.
It was huge. It was probably 101st.
Yeah, out of Camp Bagel by 69. Yeah.
But I don't know. Captain Nicholson, I guess, went back to his staff duty, and Big Sid did, and I don't know what happened to Master Sergeant Webb. But that was a fiasco.
Oh my God!
But I ran 5 more missions after that, and
then you're toward duty. But you and I have a personal thing we have to get back to here, because in April of '69, my team was given a mission at the Mugia Pass to go up there and to go in heavily fortified and blah blah blah, and that day you're out there heckling us. They took a couple pictures, which we use in our book. What I never realized was until you and I were at the SFA reunion in San Antonio like 7 years ago, and you and I were talking about that picture. Remember that day? You were teasing me. Remember that day? And you were heckling us when we were getting our pictures taken.
Yes. Oh,
during
yeah,
the inspection.
General.
So Stillwell.
Yeah, Stillwell.
Yeah. So we
were
there.
coming off the mountain.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You were coming off, and then you just came by to harass us. And then you and I were talking in San Antonio. Right. This is a very serious inspection, sir.
That picture looks so serious, but no one will ever have any idea.
Somehow we didn't quite get you flipping us your rabbit ear thing. But the reason why I want to return to this thing is our mission was to go to the Mugia Pass. And so you and I are in San Antonio talking over a beer, and you said, by the way, remember that day? And of course, you and I were laughing about that day because you were harassing us, getting our damn pictures taken. And you said, what's the mission? I said, well, we're going to go up to Mugia Pass for a couple of days and go in heavily and bomb trucks and do stuff like this. You go, really? They came to me. I told them to fuck off. That's a suicide mission. We ain't doing it. And you and I never talked about it. But that was just one of those missions. So that's a personal thing between you and I.
Yeah.
But oh my God! But also on a day-to-day operational basis, everything was so compartmentalized that sometimes we didn't talk enough.
Yeah.
Which would be that example. I mean, at FOB 1, we had a clubhouse. We had our clubhouse at FOB 4, and now CCN, where when the guys came back, they talked.
Right.
But when it came to missions, prep, what you had done. Like the Frenchmen did that mission where they went in and blew up that NVA fuel dump.
Right.
they came back. They never talked about it. Some, the quiet professionals don't talk about shit unless you sit down with a 1-0.
We should have discussed with one another. The 1-0s should have talked with one another after every mission.
Yeah.
As a group.
Should have been an SOP. Now we think about it 51 years later.
Should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
But
So I'm sorry, we just had to get that little sidebar in life because I'll never forget. I've told so many people that story. I told Jocko this story, I don't know if I did it on tape or not, but it's like, yeah, we did this mission, and then Babysan comes, we said, fuck off, we're not doing that. But you had the experience, and we were still getting used to CCN. We had run some other targets that were in layouts across the border, but that was a big one, and this was all new for us.
Right.
And of course, you had much more wisdom than I did at that time. But little did we say, had we talked, I would have said, excuse me, can you just maybe give this to that Nicholson asshole? Let him go up there or something instead of us.
It would have been, yeah.
Indeed. Okay, I'm sorry. We got off track. So you wrap up your tour of duty. It's August. You return. You go back to Bragg, Fort Devens.
I go back to Fort Bragg, and...
This is August 69 now.
Right. And
did you get any leave when you went home first?
I took a leave.
Go down to Alabama, check things out.
Brought my wife back to Fort Bragg.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I moved on post when I came back, on post housing. Instead of, I had a house in Fayetteville when I took her back to Alabama before I deployed to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And took the kids out of school and put them back at Fort Bragg. And I ended up in the 7th group. Sergeant Major McIntosh was the B-team sergeant major. He got orders for Charlie Gray and several others from FOB4 were in his B-team.
Right, and McIntosh, just for the record, was one of our sergeant majors who we all worshipped because of his experience. He was with the 187th, did a combat jump or 1 or 2 into Korea.
Right.
And by the time he came to us, he's a sergeant major, and nobody messed with him, and he was good. He came to Fubai first before he came down to, after we closed Fubai, he came down with the Iceman. Colonel Jack Isler was the CO, and then McIntosh kicked ass and took numbers.
Right.
But he was good. He really listened to the men now.
Yes.
And you and him had a special report at some point.
I had no problem with him. I mean, I did my job, and there's a lot of guys. If you're a slacker, Isler was trouble.
Oh yeah.
But if you're doing your jobs, everything's good.
Well, yeah, my favorite McIntosh story, just as a sidebar, was we were still at Fubai, and we just came back out of the field, and I'm going up to the clubhouse to get sodas for the guys. And he goes, Meyer, why is your hair so long? You got to get a haircut. I said, sorry, Sergeant Major. We've been in the field and had a mission beard. Oh, never mind. Continue on. He cared about the men in the mission first, none of that petty bullshit from camp.
McIntosh was a super good leader.
Well, then you met with him, so you had that part of your relationship with him that you continued on with that after you're in 7th Group.
Right. He had Charlie Gray, James Parker, MJ. What was MJ's last name? MJ.
He was an FB4 guy before I got there.
Yeah.
I knew you from the clubhouse.
Right. But anyway, he had a bunch of us from FOB4 on the same A-team.
Right.
And the rest were spread out amongst the other. But the big majority of the 12 were guys from FOB4.
So again, Mr. Modesty's sitting here. Here's the sergeant major for the entire company. Says, I want you guys here with me. And that's a feather in your cap, brother.
Well, he would.
He wouldn't say it that way, but that's what that effect was.
He would call Charlie and I up occasionally, and we'd have a shot of Jim Beam with him in the evening. But Charlie had got an R&R to Taiwan, I think. I think he went to Taiwan. He and 2 or 3 other guys got one of those C-130 maintenance flights.
Indeed.
And they were at the R&R Center, and one day, a couple of weeks later, Sergeant Major asked me, he said, "Where's Charlie?"
2 weeks later, because R&R is only 5 days.
Right.
So he left, but 2 weeks later.
Charlie, he said, "Where's Charlie?" And I said, "I don't know, Sergeant Major. Last I heard, he was on R&R. He said, "His R&R is over." I said, "I don't know, Sergeant Major. I've not seen Charlie." But he knew Charlie and I hung around together. But he got to lead. He called the R&R Center, and Charlie and I can't remember who the guys were, but anyway, they found out that if they reported to the R&R Center drunk, they wouldn't let them on the plane to come back. So every morning
They came in drunk.
They'd put on their uniform, come to catch the plane, and they'd been drinking.
Charlie.
So they spent another week
Yeah.
in Taiwan. Well, the Sergeant Major called that R&R Center and found out what was going on, and he told the guy, he said, "In the morning when they report, you take their uniforms. I don't care how you do it, get security, take their uniforms, don't let them leave the building. In the morning, give them their uniforms back and put them on the plane." And I didn't know this till years later.
No.
What had happened after we come back to Bragg. Sergeant Major finally told me what happened. But but he was a good man. But when Charlie got back, he sent him to Leghorn
Ooh, yeah.
and on radio relay
This
again.
is the radio real estate where you were earlier in your tour of duty. After you're down at Bambi to it.
And Sergeant Major left. He de-roast, but I'd already de-roast because I left before the Sergeant Major did because I was packing up to go.
Yeah,
on.
because he came at FOB 1 like in the fall, like October
Right.
or November, and you came in country in August.
Right.
So you're at least a month and a half, 2 months ahead of his
Right.
1 year tour of duty in Vietnam. So
Yeah.
you're going home. McIntosh is now picking on me and Lynn Black. We're establishing our rapport with him.
I'm packed up to go on another mission,
Mm-hmm.
and he walks into my hooch, and he says, "Sergeant, where do you think you're going?" I said, "I'm going on another mission, Sergeant Major." He put his hands on his shoulder, on his waist, and he said, "Sergeant, your mission is to take that web gear and that rucksack down to supply. You turn the rucksack in, keep your web gear. You're pulling gate guard for the next 14 days, and you can go to the train and eat all the ice cream you want to. You're going home to your family. You're not going on another mission."
No kidding. He knew about that. Your D-Rose was.
Yeah,
Wow.
but
They don't make sergeant majors like that anymore. Well, maybe they do.
he
With SF, they
well,
might.
he knew I was going to Bragg. I didn't know I was going to Bragg till
Talk about being last to know.
they got to
Yeah.
till they got to group. I didn't
No
know
kidding.
I was going to Fort Bragg.
Well, that's why I thought I was gone. Then we wound up at 10th group. It's like, oh my God, I want to. Never mind. Continue on, sir.
But and then they all of us had orders to the 7th group to a certain B team, and it was Sergeant Major McIntosh. I didn't know that till later because I got sidetracked to G3. I was working at the center.
So, had you made E6 yet, or are you still sergeant?
I made E6
Yeah.
in Vietnam during that tour.
Yeah, because you made us start saluting you because
Right.
you're E6s and we were just E4s.
But anyway, I hear this voice. I'm walking down the Puzzle Palace hallway, and I heard a voice, "Sergeant, Sergeant." He kept on, Sergeant. And finally I turned around and looked, and it was Sergeant Major McIntosh coming down the hallway.
Oh, wow.
And he picked me up off the floor and hugged me, bear hugged me. He said, boy, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in my B team in the 7th group. And he said, I said, Sergeant Major, set me down, and we'll talk. He did. And he said, your orders are to report. This was on a Friday. He said, on Monday morning, you be at building such and such across from the center for the B team formation.
No kidding.
I said, Sergeant Major, I don't have orders. He said, I gave you your orders. The written orders will follow. And I'd been trying to get on an A team, get back to an A team for months. And he straightened it out.
Got you on a B team, though.
In his B team, but and then I was on an A team.
Because we should, just for the record, you can explain a little bit. The A teams are the action teams. B teams support A at that time, and the C supports B, but it's a whole supply chain to keep the A teams moving, and that's why you wanted an A team as opposed to B. But when the sergeant major scarfs your ass up and goes, your orders will be here, be there Monday morning. Okay, you're only in E6, and you don't want to get busted at E5 by saying no to the sergeant major.
Well, you just didn't say no to McIntosh.
No, I never did. For sure.
But we and everything worked out. I stayed a couple of years with 7th group, and
couple years.
Yeah.
No kidding.
And McIntosh retired. Maybe not a couple of years. Maybe it was a year. Because McIntosh retired and left the B team, and things changed drastically in the company. And I put in for reassignment to recruiting duty. And
really?
I went on recruiting duty for several years, and then
So was that within the SF, or was that regular Army recruiting?
Regular Army recruiting. I was assigned to Panama City, Florida. That's where the scuba team from the 7th come to do the refresher training.
The combat divers.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, they came there twice a year.
You running the Walt Shoemate down there?
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah, all of them
wow.
came.
But he's a legend of our SF legends for combat divers.
Right.
Developed a program and everything else.
Yeah.
Just a complete stud.
But I'd always go out and dive with them when they come down for a refresher.
Oh, is that right?
They'd do one fun dive or two, and I'd go out and dive with them.
So you go from door gunner in the first cav, now you're becoming a combat diver in your spare time in between recruiting.
But I kept in contact with everybody, even Sergeant Major McIntosh. He had retired, and he called me in Panama City, Florida. I said, Sergeant, I want you to come to Fort Bragg. I want you to put my youngest son in the Army.
Really?
I said, Sergeant Major, I'm in Florida. I can't do that. He says, you can. And you will. And I said, all right, Sergeant Major, I'll call recruiting headquarters, and I'll see what I can do. And I called the Sergeant Major at Montgomery recruiting headquarters and told him the story, and he said, go on, take the car and go up there and put him in.
Oh, no kidding.
So I did, and I put his youngest son in the Army. But then I lost, I left recruiting duty and went back to the infantry in Alaska.
In Alaska. So by the time you're in E7?
I was at E7, and I was platoon sergeant, and I was an E7P. And
E7P?
Yeah. And
promotable?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I got promoted a year after I got to Alaska in the infantry outfit. I was platoon sergeant for a year, and then I got promoted to first sergeant.
No kidding.
And I had a daughter that came down with cancer, and she had to have surgery, and they could only do the after they did the surgery in Anchorage. I was in the Sergeant Major's Academy First Sergeant course at the time that she had to have surgery, and they couldn't do surgery till I came back to Alaska. So I caught a plane back to Alaska, and they did her surgery. And I had to take her to Augusta, Georgia, Fort Gordon.
Ooh.
They reassigned me to Fort Gordon because of her treatment for radiation and chemo.
That's a heck of a commute.
But we moved to Fort Gordon, and I was first sergeant down there. She passed away, and at that time I got selected for the Sergeant Major's Academy, and I turned the Sergeant Major's Academy down and retired.
After how many years altogether?
I was 20.
20, right at 20?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I decided that I didn't know where the assignment would be. At that time, the Sergeant Major's Academy, they didn't give your assignment what it was going to be until
Till you graduate.
you graduate.
Wow.
And a week after I turned it down and put my retirement papers in, I got a letter from General Schumacher, who had selected me for the Sergeant Major's Academy, welcomed me to Delta Force upon completion of the Sergeant Major's Academy. And
oh my God! What year was this, Clete?
this was in
See if you
85.
Yeah.
85.
Wow. Yeah. 65. 20 years
85.
later. 85.
85.
No kidding.
And
Oh my God.
I still have regrets. The general's timing was off.
Yeah, by a week.
Yeah. Well, actually, the Army's timing was off because they should have told people, given the general idea of where they were going to be assigned, because you get 2 years additional
Upon completion.
on. If you go to the Sergeant Major's Academy, you get 2 years.
Right.
When you get promoted, you get 2 more years. So that would have put me to 24 years. And I just wouldn't do it without.
You just didn't feel like a real Babysan after 20 years in the Army.
No. No. But the assignment would have changed. I think it would have been the knowing where I was going would have absolutely changed.
And you had some other friends that we knew from CCN days that were still involved at Delta Force at that time.
Absolutely.
One name comes to mind in particular.
And I have a sneaky suspicion that he was involved in the assignment. I never did ask him or question him about it. But
our mutual friend Elton Bargewell, the
Yes.
first, the one, the only.
But I do think he had it, because we contacted one another after I moved back to Alabama after I retired from the Army, and I just I got his I got his email address somehow.
And was he a proud resident of Eufaula,
No,
Alabama
no,
at that
no,
time? He was
no.
still up?
He was still in Iraq.
Oh, is that okay? Sure.
And I said, you probably don't remember me, but in the message, but this is Babysan. And,
Oh, yeah.
I was just checking on you, find out when you're coming home. And he said, oh, I remember you.
Like we all do.
And yes, I'll be home next month.
No kidding.
And I said, well, where are you coming to? He said, my family is moving to Eufaula, and but I'm going to be assigned to Fort Bragg for retirement purposes. And he came home, and they were at Bragg for his retirement. And he called me and invited he invited all the SOG guys that he knew back to Bragg for his retirement, and we all showed up at his retirement. And it was.
But that was another 20 years later.
Yeah.
That's 2005.
Right.
Yeah. But you got out in '85.
Right.
And you suspected him. Of course, that he's such a class act. He would never say a word, but he would try because he knew you were a good troop, and he had a lot of involvement with Delta Force for years.
Oh yeah.
My
Yeah.
God.
He was in the second class because he disappeared from the 7th group, and we didn't know where he went, and he ended up in Delta.
Pick a number from A to D as in Delta. Yes, indeed. Well, so from there, after your Army career, you did what for a little bit there, and then we'll head on down the
before I
finishing
moved
lap
back
here.
to Alabama, I got a job with security at nuclear security at the Savannah River nuclear weapons plant, and I went on terminal leave, and the colonel that I worked for at Fort Gordon called me and asked me, he said, would you help move some, there's a fundraiser for a lady in Aiken, South Carolina that needs some help moving some stuff. I want you to come out here to Fort Gordon and take responsibility for moving all this stuff. They're putting on a play or something, and she wants to move all that stuff. I'll give you the detail, and you can go over there and do it. And I did. And I made the lady worked at the Savannah nuclear weapons plant at the headquarters of the it wasn't she didn't have anything to do with security, but I told her when I moved the stuff for her with the detail, and she was happy, and invited me to come down to the plant and eat lunch with her, and next day, and I did. And I told her I ate lunch with her, and during the meal I told her I'd applied for security at the nuclear weapons plant. And she said, "You did?" And I said, "Yes, but I've not heard from them." And she picked up the phone and got an appointment.
Connections again.
Got an appointment for me with the employment of the security.
Yeah.
And next day, I went and filled out all the paperwork and did the polygraph test. And the next week, I started nuclear weapons
No kidding.
training. And my first assignment, I was working with a retired Sergeant Major Kraft. He was a shift supervisor of where I was assigned to be a security officer. And I went to work for him, and they do a test. They do a test of security of the nuclear plant. They bring in teams from Delta Force, and
Ron Owens, and people like that.
Yeah, Ron Owens. But he and I didn't know he had anything to do with any of that until years later. But they came in to do the test, and my post during the test. We had the shadow force we always carried live ammo on all the security positions inside the plant area.
Oh, yeah.
But when they do that test with the Delta Force, we had blanks, and they put the what do you call the electronic gear, miles gear that goes off in your rifle. They put an attachment that shoots a laser beam.
Right.
It sets off the miles gear. We all wear that, and so do the Delta Force guys. And I was on the roof of the building the night of the test, with a machine gun, and I saw the guys coming off the corner of the plant through the fence, and they climb into a flatbed truck, pull the tarp over them. 3 of them get in the cab of the truck, and I call in to report to the shift leader. I spotted the intruders. They're headed towards the main building. I'm taking them under fire at this time. And I opened up with a machine gun. I got the 3 guys in the cab, and I was picking them off one at a time. By that time, as they come out from under the tarp, and by that time, this roving patrols had blocked them in. There's 2 10-foot fences and 2 patrol cars behind them, and they killed the rest of them, and the game's over.
Wow.
But they put them inside the plant, and then they were going to try to break out. And the guy come up, he'd turned his miles gear off, but I blazed him with that M60. And I just set the M60 down. I said, this guy's stuff's turned off. Give me live ammo, he'd be dead. And I was cussing a little, and the lieutenant in charge of overall in charge of security tried to settle me down some, and the Wackenhut manager out of Florida, the president of Wackenhut Security, carried my machine gun off the building for me. Next day I got promoted to a shift supervisor, and they sent me to the separation point at the nuclear facility as shift supervisor. And they had never passed the security test when they'd been tested by Delta, and I'd been there about two or 3 months.
So all that time and your experience as a door gunner came into really good play there. You're a natural.
That's weird. That's weird.
Yeah, no kidding.
But they came in to test us. So I'd always go up in the plant. I'd check my post 3 or 4 times during the shift. But we did alternating shifts: morning shift, evening shift, and midnight shift. But they always did the test on midnight shift. But I would always go up in the plant, and I knew the operators, the civilian operators with the Department of Energy, because I'd sit and eat lunch with them, and
sure,
I got to know them.
You know how to build team rapport.
And that was a part of security.
Absolutely.
And I got to know them, by first name, and when I'd walk through, they'd know. They'd wave, or
they just called you M60.
Well, we got tested. We were the first team to be tested.
That beat them.
That there. Well, yeah, we did beat them.
That's so cool.
But I'd sat down with one of the guys day before we were to be tested, and eat lunch with him. And I asked him. I said, "Any strangers been around here lately? Anything strange going on in the building?" He said, "Yeah, there's 2 guys came through here yesterday." I said, where did they spend most of their time? And he said, well, they went to the door down the hall that way, and then they went down to the one down the hallway by the main separation point. And so there was only 2 places. I knew who it was, and there was only 2 places that they could enter that plant, and that was the 2 places. And I doubled up security on it the night of the
test.
And they had a reaction force by helicopter that's in the air that you could call in.
Really?
At any time that you needed them.
The DOE assets you had.
Yeah. And
any King Bees?
No, they had little light helicopters, Delta Force helicopters. But anyway, the thing went off, and they did hit that door inside the building, and I sent the rovers in behind them, and they brought another security officer in, and they killed all of them right there at that one door.
Wow.
First time that, and I resigned that night and moved back to Alabama.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God! So you moved back to Alabama, and what happened from there on? Because by now you have at least one pension.
I retired, and for a while I went to school for 2 years with a GI Bill, and
What kind of learning were you getting there?
woodworking and cabinet making.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Really?
And I never did apply it. I bought a house, and we finished it up on the inside, and I built the cabinets and did all the woodwork inside.
A wood craftsman.
And
Indeed.
I put the money to use,
Indeed.
experience. But after I got the house built, I started. I got an offer on a job selling meat to grocery stores, and I called on the Bruno's account in a large grocery company in Birmingham, Alabama. And they had grocery stores in 5 states. And they put me on a team to go set up brand new grocery stores. All we did was move from one new store to another, set it up. On the day that the grocery store opened, we'd move to another new store and get it ready.
Wow.
It'd take us about a week or 10 days to set it up for grand opening. On grand opening days, we'd move to the next one. I helped open 150 grocery stores in 7 years.
That's a
that I
lot
did
of
it.
meat peddling.
Yeah. But I sold a lot of meat.
Yeah.
But then I totally retired. After that, I totally retired.
So was that around that period of time where we had the Special Operations Association? You found time to be director for a couple tours of duty. You were president for a while.
I had
and lived happily ever after.
Well, I had met Deborah and married her, and we were living in Coleman, my hometown. And one day we bought a computer, and one day I'm sitting there playing on the computer, and I just typed in SOG, and up pops all you guys' names
No.
and contact information on some. And I contacted Lynn Black.
Right.
And I may have contacted you, I don't know, but
That's so long about long-term memory stuff, brother.
but they told me about SOG and all this stuff, and
Yeah. The rest is history.
the rest is history.
Well, we're getting to that point where we've been chatting for a little while here. Before we shut down, any final thoughts or cogitations, ruminations that you might have, sir?
No, this is probably, I don't know where the highlight of my life will be, but this little trip here with these Special Forces soldiers.
And we should illuminate where we are. We are in outside of Fort Bragg.
Outside
And
Fort Bragg.
you and I and other SOG men had the privilege of visiting 3rd Special Forces Group that had a SOG symposium, SOG Heritage, 3-day event. And we're in the middle of that right now.
Right.
Kicked off this morning, Monday, November the 8th and 9th and 10th. And we have a chance to meet these young Special Forces men who carried forward in the mission, who are incredible, as well as some of the command elements. And then tomorrow, some guys are going out to the range to see what the latest boy toys are. And in the meantime, they get to talk to the old gray heads like you and I that spent a little time on the ground in SOG. And it's amazing.
And the highlight of that are the mountain Ards are coming tomorrow.
Indeed. The highlight of the day for sure. So with that thought in mind, any other final thoughts, sir?
No.
Well,
this is good.
we're at that point where we close out. We always thank Jocko Willing Productions for making this all possible for he and his staff. And as always, we thank all of our military, our Border Patrol, first responders, emergency personnel that help to keep our country going, and these days parents that are fighting for their freedoms here in America. We also thank the men and the women who served our country in years past. Heroes like you, Clete Sinyard, a.k.a. Babysan, a true soldier, a great man. And we also remember and salute the men and the women who aren't here today, who today in Vietnam alone, as you and I remember, there are 1,584 missing in action, 50 of which are Green Berets alone from the Secret War, and another 83 aviators who died supporting us on the ground at that time. We salute them, and again, we thank Jocko for this production. Until next time, God bless America.
Thank you, Till.
Airborne, brother.